Hi guys, so tomorrow we are going to start probably one of the more memorable parts of life science in 7th grade, and that's the dissections. You've probably heard lots about those, either from older students or maybe siblings. Uh, but the reason we do dissections isn't just to cut things open and have fun. There's actually a really good reason why we do it and why they're important. And we'll kind of talk about that before I actually talk about our first dissection. As you can see, our first dissection will be the earthworm. So this is kind of the unit progression we've gone through in 7th grade so far this year. Okay, we started talking about cells and about living things, what cells are, cell organelles. Okay, so kind of the function of cell organelles, the function of different cells in both plants and animals. And then we moved on to the levels of organization. So we were talking about cells being kind of the main building block of living things. Cells come together to form tissues, tissues form organs, organs come together to form organ systems. And then, of course, you put all the organ systems together, you get an organism. Okay, now dissecting organisms, even something as simple as an earthworm, gives us an excellent opportunity to actually look internally, so to look at the anatomy of an organism and look at those organs and those organ systems and how they actually make up an organism. And even looking at an earthworm, we can really get at even human anatomy and look at similarities and differences, and it helps us to understand how our bodies actually function as well. So earthworms quickly are in the phylum Annelida, okay, and that means little rings. So they have segmented bodies. Now there's about 17 species worldwide in this phylum, and these include things such as earthworms, tubebirds, and leeches. Of course, we all know what leeches are. Now, we need to briefly go over the tools that we'll be using during dissections. So the first one here are dissecting pins. Now those are actually used to hold down the organism once we kind of cut them open. So they'll kind of hold open the skin flaps. Okay, these tweezer looking things, those are actually called forceps. Okay, so those are really nice to kind of grip onto things and either move them or kind of hold them back. Same with a probe. So a dissecting probe is just good to kind of move organs around in an organism, maybe kind of poke things around a little bit. Of course, here these are scalpels. Okay, so these are what we use to cut things. Now these are super sharp, so it goes without saying, but we have to be very careful using the scalpels. And same with the dissecting scissors as well. Okay, we use these for cutting skin, bone, things like that. Okay, so these are the tools that we'll actually be using, and you'll get really familiar with those. So first, looking at the external anatomy of an earthworm. Okay, we start up here with the mouth. Now each one of these little rings is called a segment. And of course on an earthworm there's many segments. Okay, the next important part is what's called the clitellum. And it's kind of this raised portion of the body, probably about a quarter down the length of the body, maybe about a third. And it's kind of just a lighter, and it's kind of all around the body there's just this kind of raised part. And if we go all the way down to the end, that's when we get to the anus. To make the incision, okay, the first thing we want to look at is, or look for, is the clitellum. And that's the clitellum right here. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to find. It's pretty obvious what it is. Again, it's kind of lighter, it's raised. But we're actually going to turn the earthworm onto its, so the ventral side is pointing up. which means it'll be laying on its back with its stomach laying up. And you know it's a stomach because it's kind of flatter and it's a lot lighter on the ventral side. So that wants to be pointing up. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is make an incision from the clitellum all the way up through to the tip of the earthworm, okay, near the mouth. Now, you don't want to put and you're going to be doing that with your scalpel. Now, the key is that you don't want to put your scalpel too far down, or else you're going to cut into these organs, which we really want to see. And as you cut open or make this incision, you're going to be using these dissecting pins, as you can see here, to hold kind of the skin flaps. Okay, and that will allow us to see the internal anatomy. So the first thing you're going to see is the pharynx, and then the esophagus. Now you're going to see these darker, they almost look like mouse droppings, and those are actually the hearts. And earthworms have 5 sets of hearts. And we get to the crop, the gizzard, and then the intestines. Now all of this, the crop, gizzard, and intestines, okay, and the esophagus, that's all part of the digestive system. And the intestine actually runs the entire length of the body. It's super long. So that's one of the key things, one of the phenomenon that we're going to be talking about with one of your questions is why would the intestine be so long? So we're going to be using what we know about the digestive system and the intestine to figure out why the intestine would travel the entire length of the body of the earthworm. Okay, I hope this helps. If you need to, you can watch it a couple times so you're ready to come in class tomorrow and get right to work. All right, see you guys tomorrow.